Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 393 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Wren, and the show notes are located at strengthcoachpodcast.com. Today on the strengthcoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner, spoke to Coach Boyle about the causes of shaking during ISOs and the ACL return to play timeline. Those are from a thread on Twitter that showed a video of a young lady doing some ISOs about 9 or 10 months into her ACL rehab, and when practice was initiated, she started to shake during some of the ISOs. So there's a lot of conversation about that. We talked about social media influencers, maybe how to get rid of them, and deciding when or what to add into the gym, specifically when trends come along, things like cold plunging or infrared saunas, etc., when there seems to be a little demand for it in the general population. For the Hit the Gym of the Strength Coach segment, I have on Brandon Cullen. He is the co-founder and chief concept officer at MADabolic, the industry's leading strength and conditioning franchise. He is an athlete turned entrepreneur. So we wanted to talk all about that and how that transition went. And he played professional hockey. We'll talk about what is MADabolic and how it began, and the programming, what it's an acronym, what MAD means. We're going to talk about specialization and the power of niche concepts, franchising, excellence versus scalability, and the power of being average is an interesting part there. Inclusivity versus exclusivity, and how the two concepts can coexist. That and so much more coming up with Brandon in a little while. For the nominally maximizing the member experience with Sumit Seth, Sumit's going to talk about the tremendous value of saying yes when it's done intentionally. There's a lot of talk about learning to say no, but he wants you to learn how to say yes the right way. Perform Better's huge holiday sale is here, guys. Up to 50% off over 100 items, including dumbbells, kettlebells, plyo boxes, bumper plates, racks, barbells, sandbags, med balls, and more. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Did you know that they had a rewards program? So all you got to do is when you go on the site, you sign up, you create an account, you'll earn 50 points. And then you'll earn every time you shop, and you can redeem those points for exclusive rewards. So you'll get points for joining, 25 points for following on Instagram, 50 for writing product reviews, and you'll even get some on your birthday. You'll get 100 points. So check it all out at performbetter.com. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Don't forget StrengthCoach.com, articles, videos, and one of the longest running forums in strength and conditioning. You can try StrengthCoach.com out 7 days for free. Go to StrengthCoach.com to start your free trial. MBSC.TV, that's where you're basically a fly on the wall at MBSC. You get staff meetings, programs, seminars, and in-services from top coaches. You can try that out for free for 7 days at MBSC.TV. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you?
All right. Just a side note, because you always kind of comment on my stuff when I'm putting them out. Finally got the steel for my new skates. Okay, so now you already knew this because you have kids, but my skates were 35 years old. I love them, but it was time for new ones, and I didn't know that the steel comes separate. That was another bill that, we got
blades for $200 now. Never mind.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous. He's like, I'm like, how much are these skates? He's like, well, last year's model, they'll be like, it should be about, $450. I'm like, oh, perfect. He was like, yeah. And then the steel will be about $180. I'm like, oh, come on. you know, so I feel for all you hockey parents out there even more. But yeah, so it was so weird, Mike, just skating on those. And there was a guy out there, he's kind of, a little older, and he's like really knowledgeable and all this stuff. He's like, you know what? Untie the top, don't tie them all the way up. It was like night and day because you don't get any ankle mobility with the new skates at all.
Right.
So
They're like casts.
it's amazing. But yeah, it was kind of like skating all over again yesterday, but I was starting to come around. But anyway, Mike, I want to start with this conversation on ISOs. I'm going to kind of just pull up this, it was a Twitter thread. And a guy basically was good conversation. I think George Adams, he was asking about, she showed a video of a young lady. What do we think's going on? 9 months post ACL reconstruction, cleared from the doc, RTP for about 3 months. She's shaking when she's doing ISOs. There's a lot of answers here, and I'm sure they're great answers, but for me, I was like, what are they talking about? I mean, it was got like, just crazy with the neurological stuff. It was a little nuts, and you're like, look, I'm gonna be a bit contrarian here. Big surprise. I love ISOs. I would say she's tremoring like that because, and that's what it was. She's wanting to know why she was tremoring. She's not nearly ready for being returned to play. Basically, it should be closer to 12 months. Can you expand on this, Mike, and that conversation? And do you still feel like it was after all of these brainiacs with the neurological stuff, et cetera, they want to be twitching a little bit. Can you expand on this?
I was really surprised actually at the responses because they were like you said, it was all this, oh, neurological, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And uh Occam's razor, the simplest solution is usually the best solution. And so you look at that and you say, she's just weak. Like if you look at her legs, and we're gonna go into this later on too. I'm trying to be positive on social media and I'm trying to not kind of, I don't know, be disrespectful to someone who's posting a genuine question.
Yeah.
But based on the responses, I thought, you guys are all crazy. This girl's just not close to where she needs to be. And so I tried to politely say that I just don't think she's ready. At 9 months, she's the class. Like sometimes you see some people at 9 months, and usually the person who's ready at 9 months is really mesomorphic, and you got to look at them and think, wow, the musculature is really, really good. Like if you looked at her leg, if you looked at her quad and her calf, they scream not ready, right? I mean, there's no definition there. There's no muscle. Like this person is holding an isometric contraction and you can't see any muscle at all, right? That's a problem. And so my thing was, hold the phone here, kids. This person is just flat out not ready. The reason this person is shaking like a leaf is they're not strong enough. She doesn't have some weird neurological problem. My favorite story, AJ Malesko, who you know because she's a commentator for the Dreaded Island.
Love her.
One of my favorite people. She came in one time when she was a player, when she's 18 years old, probably getting ready for her first Olympics. She's at Harvard. She's going to take a year off and train for the Olympics. And she goes on to explain to me that when she squats down, she can't get back up again, and she doesn't understand what's wrong with her. So I'm looking at her, and she's all of 6 feet tall. Like she's a tall girl. Yeah. She's skinny. And I said, okay, just show me. And she squats down and she's just stuck at the bottom. And I remember looking at her and I said, AJ, you have a really, really bad case of weakness. I said, and she just kind of looked at me. She was like, seriously? Like, you think that's what's wrong? I'm like, that's absolutely what's wrong. You're just not strong enough to get your body back out of the hole because it's a long way to the ground for you.
Yeah.
And obviously we got her started. I mean, she started with bodyweight squats. Literally, that was her workout, was sets of bodyweight squats. And I looked at this girl, and that was why I asked about, can she do 10 one-leg squats? Because, again, you get into all the fancy return to play and quad hamstring ratio and triple hop and all this stuff. I look at, you can't do 10 one-leg squats on each leg. I don't care what your dimensions are. I don't care if you're freaking 7 feet tall or you're 2 feet tall.
Mike, to what level? To what level? Just by the way.
18. But that's why I put the video up. It's usually for us. So it's about 14 and a half inches, because what we do is we put a 6-inch box in front of a 18-inch box. So that's 12 inches. That's too low. We then usually put one AirX pad on top of the box. So you end up, it's about 14 to 14 and a half inches, depending exactly the thickness of the AirX pad. And that usually for most people, so if you say like, if you're the average tibia length, right, 18, 19 inches, you get a little bit of anterior translation, so that changes the angle a little bit. You get about a parallel squat at that position. So what we're looking at is a parallel relationship one leg squat. I always say people, not a pistol, because it's not a freaking pistol, which drives me crazy. That's another, I always repost my article. A pistol is a one leg squat, but a one leg squat is not a pistol. And then you got to be able to do that. That's like just step one. Can't do that, you're not ready. Period. End of story. I don't want to hear any mitigating circumstance. You're going to get hurt again. No, that's why the re-tear rate is so high. Somebody asked today, if you looked at one of today's Twitter questions, was why do we think that the ACL rate and the hamstring rate is still so high? And I said, just not enough unilateral training. And that's not Mike Boyle banging his unilateral drum. That's just the reality that if you want somebody to not tear their ACL, then you better get them good at one leg squats. I did a seminar. I forget even what I did. I did a webinar for somebody that day. I've done a couple of them. And one of the things we were talking about was ACL tears. And I said, we did 5 years. When we very first started, we did 5 years of professional women's soccer without having anybody tear their ACL. And probably half the team had an ACL tear already. Because it was right at the beginning. It was when the Boston Breakers first started, at the very beginning of that, whatever that first women's professional soccer league was called. I don't even remember what the league was called. But 5 years, no ACL tears. But we really prioritize it. People, like, it's the classic with one leg squat. Oh yeah, we do those. I can't tell you how many people tell me, oh, we do those, or we do those in our program. Then I ask somebody to do one, and they look like you gave them a Chinese arithmetic test. It's like, no, you've never done this before.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, to me, the fundamental problem. If I wish more people were posting good videos on their X, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, of people doing good one leg squats under load, I would feel better about the future of the world. At least
We'll get to that. I want to stay on. That's our next question, is about the influencers. But so then return to play, that 9, it should be 9 to 12 months. There really shouldn't, you shouldn't have to worry about a definitive time. It's like more of, hey, at 9 months, Marky's doing great one leg squats. We just loaded him. This is awesome. He's able to do them all. Is he ready to go? Or because I think you were saying something about 12 months is more the timeline.
12 months is more the timeline now. If you look at it, and there are people that are different. There are still accelerated rehab doctors out there, which I can't believe, but there are still people who believe that you can, or that it's okay to try to get back as soon as you can. But statistically, Dr. Asdis, who did Mark's surgery, who's kind of my go-to guy and a really good guy, he's become a 12-month guy because his feeling is that the literature supports 12 months. If you look at the re-tear literature, I think the re-tear rate drops 10% for every additional month past 9, which means you're 30% less likely to re-tear at 12 than you were at 9. And as I said, my problem is just, I think the return to play criteria is crap. That's my own opinion. I look at people because, I've said this before, but I think we're going backwards in the ACL thing because we're looking at things like quad hamstring ratio, Cybex testing, isometric quad testing. I mean, I hate to, again, here I'm banging the unilateral drum and I'm banging the functional drum, right? I'm Mr. Functional Training, although I don't want to be, but that ability to stand on one leg is indicative of the ability to co-contract. And somebody posted, I don't know, it might have been Mick Hughes. Somebody posted that the idea of that somebody who could do 22 squat to stands was much less likely to re-tear. So somebody basically, and that's more 18-inch box or a standard exercise bench kind of thing where you just sort of squat down to the bench, stand back up, squat down. Very similar to the squat to stand test that you would use for elderly people on two legs, but they use that on a single leg. And I know that was in Mick Hughes's ACL return to play. I think it's called the Melbourne ACL program, if I'm not mistaken. But his initial criteria, and he's since kind of gone the route of a little more quad, leg extension kind of thing. But initially, it was just how many single leg bridges can you do? How many single leg squats can you do? And that was going to tell you whether you were ready or not. And some of that stuff, some basic muscle endurance stuff, is probably a better return to play character or criteria than some of the stuff that people are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, some of the if people weren't going down the super neurological answers, they were super definitive. Like, oh, that's obvious. That is, fatigue and of the muscles and stress in a much higher on her distal quads due to having weight on her toes. I mean, it's kind of like, which is fine, I get it, but it's like kind of you're telling me that from a video, which, by the way, I loved what you said. And this is something I didn't really pick up. Look at her, too. Like the quad, I'm looking at the video right now. Not a lot of muscle down there, and I didn't even think about that. Like when I was looking at that video. So
that was the first thing I looked at, but I didn't realize that George, I believe it's George, was actually, I think, an assistant for Sean Hayes, who was one of my very first interns, who's now at University of Georgia. And again, you're walking this line between trying to provide honest answers, trying to help educate via the internet, which is where we're at right now, and trying to not look like an asshole. I'm not good at all of those. I'm good at sweating.
You're not. I can attest to that.
Sorry,
Sean
I haven't videoed anybody not putting their weights away today, so you can.
There you go.
You don't have to go after me.
The fun fact: Sean Hayes, second guest 17 years ago on the Strength Coach podcast. Great guy.
Well, the crazier part is that you know that.
Yeah, right. There you go. Well, I remember it's Sean Skeen, Sean Hayes, and Sean Windle. So I was like, how are my first three guests in strength and conditioning?
I thought it was just a Rain Man moment for you.
Exactly. I got a few of those. Coach, let's segue that into this idea. I know you were getting mad. You were like talking about some influencer and they have, 300,000 followers and they're posting some crappy four exercises you need. And then, three of them were horrible. And then the one that was good was just poorly demonstrated. What do you have a solution for this? Do you have, it doesn't seem like this is ever gonna end when you think, okay, we're getting more educated, there's so much good stuff out there, but we're still seeing this is super common.
Yeah. Is there a solution? I don't know, because as we started to talk before we hit record, and my issue with this is that do people like me, so I would say I have a legitimate resume in whatever, fitness, strength and conditioning, personal training. Should I go on and respond negatively to someone who very apparently doesn't know what they're doing, but has 300,000 followers? Now, this guy has 300,000 people following him. He posts 4 exercises, and that's a big thing now, a thread. 4 exercise, 4 must do for whatever. And this was, 4 must do exercises for healthy low back. And I fall for the clickbait. I click and look, and then I just get horrified and get angry and then try to figure out, okay, what should I really do? And I don't know. I'm very conflicted about it because there's 300,000 people who obviously think that this person knows what they're doing. And just alone, the first demonstration was a bridge, just a 2-leg bridge that literally looked like someone had said, it would have been my okay, do a bridge really, really wrong. Like do it and really stick your stomach up and go really bridge through your lumbar spine. That's what this guy did. That was the first one. And that was the only good one. The other 3 were just absolute shit. So I looked and thought, okay, One of them I might recommend, except for the fact that the demonstration is awful. The other three I would never tell you to do. So instead, I guess I passive aggressively went off and ranted on my own account without doing anything productive relative to that person's account.
Yeah. Well, you think, I mean, is there a way to answer that? Could it say, okay, I'm not sure I would do them that way. Here's 4 that I think have really helped a lot of I don't know, right?
That's interesting though. When you said that's probably not a bad response, truthfully, because and maybe that's what I might do next time, because there is such a proliferation of these. It's really interesting, and I don't know why. As you are well aware, the I've gone to the whatever it is, the verified account, thinking just because I wanted to really see what would happen if I said, okay, I'm going to spend $15 a month and I'll be able to edit. I still have typos in my posts, unfortunately,
I
but
saw one the other day, and you posted twice.
in that one, influential, I spelled influential. It came out a K instead of an L, but I didn't look.
And you posted it twice.
Yeah, I know.
Can't delete it?
I edited it once, and I didn't see that. And then when I went back to edit again, I had passed, because you still only have 60 minutes to edit. By the time I realized that I had misspelled influential, I went back in and realized that that I couldn't fix it again. So I was just kind of stuck with it.
See, that's why sometimes you have to take that offensive approach. Like when I asked you about the podcast, if you wanted to do the podcast for the strengthcoach.com, I said, Mike, I know you don't know what a podcast is, but it's basically like a radio show for the internet. Would you be interested in? See, so you gotta you can.
Yeah, I know. I
preempt
that gives me a good idea. Here's 4. But my problem too is I don't know how to do that. When I look at how guys do these threads, I have to figure out how to actually do that. Like if I said, oh, here's 4 that I like, then I have to figure out, because I guess you got to make 4 separate posts and link them all together.
It's on the bottom. It's on the bottom of it, when you post. So it's something like you can say like when you go to post, they're on the very bottom. It might there's a let me see here. We're doing this live, everybody. There is a way to do it. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Mike. So once you start writing, there's a little plus button right next to post, and that's where you would do your second.
Add another. Okay, I see.
Yes.
Yep. All right, good. Add another post. I just checked. All right, good. Because sometimes I look and think I don't know how to do one post. So.
Yeah. You were learning here on the show. Good stuff, Coach.
Live. Yes, folks, you're getting it right here now. Done for you.
Amazing.
Twitter post.
Coach, I have Brandon Cullen on today. He is the founder and chief content officer at a kind of a chain of boutique fitness, really cool strength conditioning one called MADabolic. Great stuff. Really smart guy, former pro hockey player, minor league. So we connected. But good friends with Eric Malzoni, who that's the product of the email. You were on Eric's podcast, and then Eric. Yeah, so that's what came about. Eric, and what a great guy Brandon is.
Eric was the one through Vince, right?
Yes. See the connections, everybody. But so what we were talking about was understanding when to add things, and really saying from his perspective, in his kind of facility, not to just jump on things. Like, for example, cold plunge and infrared. Everybody's like trying to jump on that, right? And then you're kind of going away from your core competencies. And I mentioned to you about how the adult thing kind of came naturally. You let the market decide. More adults started coming in, and cool, we're going to start to make room for that. We're going to start to think about that a little bit more. It wasn't like you said, hey, we should go after adults. And, 20 years ago, you were with athletes, et cetera. So you let the market decide. A lot of times your decisions are logistics, but how do you stay away from, especially with your 4 young partners now, how do you stay away from some of the adding some of the stuff that you feel might be valuable?
Well, I think my young partners grew up with me. So they know how I think, and they know that they just know that we don't do that. We definitely are not trendy. We do not respond to trends. We are not going to put something in because it looks like it's popular. And I think I did a thing for Pat Beath, last week, just on business. He had done a business summit, and I recorded a talk for him. And one of the things that I'd said is we've survived and outlived now really CrossFit curves, and we're going to survive and outlive F45, and we're going to survive and outlive Orange Theory, and all of these kind of flavor of the month club things. We're going to outlast all of them, and we're up again this year. We've gained. I don't think there's ever been a year, except maybe the COVID year, when we didn't increase our revenue by a small amount. And generally that's like 7 to 10% we increase our revenue. But if you do that, and I've always said that, if you do that over a period of 7 to 8 years, you've doubled your revenue. And it's the classic slow and steady wins the race. And the example that I used in the presentation with Pat, I have a friend, Rob Griffin, who's a hugely successful commercial real estate guy. And years ago, when I was training him and training his kids, we were talking about people wanted us to go in and help them build a rink, and they wanted us to do this and they wanted us to do that. And I remember exactly what he said. He said, "Mike, my advice to you is stick to your knitting." He was like, just do what you do well. Don't get involved in stuff that you don't do well. Don't get involved in things that aren't your core business. And his voice has rung in my head for now, probably might be 30 years ago. He said that to me.
Wow.
But for 30 years, I've realized, okay, stick to what you're good at. This is what we're good at. This is what we know how to do. Let's do this. We're not a recovery center. We're not a stretch lab. We're not an infrared laser place. We're not a sauna bar. We do strength and conditioning pretty well. We're going to do strength and conditioning. And now, we do it for middle school kids, and we do it for high school kids, and we do it for college kids, and we do it for post-college, whoever, up to the time they're in the grave. And we do that well. And we've made that systematic, and that works. So I think those guys now know, there's no point where we're ever going to jump into the stream, the train, the trend, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about those places specifically where they've had their core competency, and now, okay, we're going to add baths and infrared, and they were trying to be something for everybody as it was, and now they're trying to jump on a lot of those other things, and they're really gonna, they jeopardize losing that, what made them successful.
Now if you look, there's been a lot of very anti-HIIT stuff that's coming up. People are saying that all this HIIT stuff isn't good for you, and so that's where you look at sort of the F45 or the Orange Theory or whatever, those kinds of things. It's high intensity all the time.
Yeah.
And we're realizing now, I've been reading, there's a couple of women that I follow who are talking about training females and postmenopausal females and females that are trying to lose weight, and saying that all this HIIT isn't good for them and that they just need basic strength training. And it's kind of like, hey, guess what? They need what we've been supplying all along. We've been supplying all along a warm-up, mobility work, a good, solid total body strength program, and then a little bit of HIIT at the end, generally speaking, but not a big hour-long smack in the face of HIIT where it's like, okay, just get on the treadmill and start running. And then when you get off the treadmill, do some burpees. And then when you get done with your burpees, do some curl and press. You know what I mean? It's like, and we'll just have some cute girl with a microphone yelling at you the whole time while you do it. That's not sustainable over the long term. And the one thing people should realize about fitness franchises, someone told me this one time, the person who makes the money is the first person. Because what that first person does is they build that business up with the intention to sell it to the second person.
Yeah.
The second person might be lucky enough to find a sucker to be the third person. The third person is totally screwed and definitely loses money. But that's the way that it works, is that first guy goes in and jumps on the trend and gets the little business going. And then there's somebody that comes to the place who thinks, oh, I want to own my own business. And that person says, yeah, I'm going to step aside and let this person take over for me, knowing full well that that was the intention, that they had it's very similar to the kind of the startup company thing, right? I'm going to do a startup and then I'm going to go public, right?
Yeah.
Because I realized if you really thought it was sustainable, you would never sell it.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're looking for the quick hit, you build it up over a couple of years and you sell it. You get while the getting's good. And then you let somebody else worry about the fact that, hey, this wasn't really a sustainable idea to begin with.
Yeah, I will say though, what he's doing, it's a slow grind, and they've been doing this for a little over 10 years, and they're going slow, they're building slow, and he's, I like the approach they're taking. I like the programming. I like everything about it. I think it's a really interesting concept. So, but we'll see.
I'll be looking forward to listening to the episode. Actually,
yeah. You'll love Brandon. He talks a lot about, some of the business concepts that he talks about are pretty cool. But Coach, I will let you go. Everybody is going to the internet is going to change from now on. Coach Boyle is going to start answering with his own threads and fixing some of these fitness influencers. So Coach, thanks for doing this.
Yes, prepare for fitness to get fixed over the next couple of months.
Anomalies Maximizing the Member Experience segment, where we explore practical strategies to help you grow, lead, and thrive, not just in business, but in life as well. Today, we're diving into a topic that might feel a little counterintuitive. We hear so much about the power of boundaries, protecting your time, and saying no. And yes, that's absolutely important. But what if I told you there's also tremendous value in saying yes when it's done intentionally? Let's talk about how to embrace opportunities, balance priorities, and use your yes wisely to create more growth, energy, and fulfillment. Let me introduce you to a concept I first learned from Holly, the wife of my mentor, Pat Rigsby, and one of the kindest, nicest people I know. Salt to earth, I tell you. She beautifully articulated how to think of your time as a series of buckets. Time is finite. We all know that. But when you view your day in buckets, it gives you clarity, control, and believe it or not, flexibility. Start with your main buckets, your personal bucket, time for yourself, your family, personal growth, your work bucket, where you break things down further. Let's say sales, marketing, coaching, strategy. Now, here's where it gets interesting. By compartmentalizing your time like this, you can add a new bucket either in your two main buckets, personal and work, or just create a brand new one altogether, your yes bucket. That is the beauty of this concept. It's so fluid that it serves you. Now, remember, this yes bucket isn't about saying yes to everything and burning yourself out. No. It's about saying yes intentionally. When it aligns with your goals, open new doors, pushes you outside of your comfort zone. After all, that is where growth happens, or simply just brings you joy and fresh energy to your life. I found this works beautifully when you combine it with something I picked up at a seminar. Color coding your calendar. Here's what I do. Red is for my personal time, and I block this first. This is when I drop my kids at school, take vacations, or go on date days. Yes, days, not nights. It works so much better for us. Green is for sales-focused activity, green, money, where I drive revenue and growth. And gray is for my CEO time, deep, reflective work on the business. By visually prioritizing my time, I can see where I'm saying yes and where I need to say no. The yes bucket has its space. It's intentional, not overwhelming. Now let's talk about why saying yes matters and how it can transform your business and your life. The beauty of creating this yes bucket is that it allows you to open up to new possibilities without guilt or chaos. It's about saying yes with purpose. When it aligns with your goals, fuels your creativity, or brings fresh energy to the table. Think about it. Some of the best opportunities come from saying yes to something unexpected. Maybe it's a coffee meeting that sparks a partnership, a community event that introduces you to a future client or team member, or stepping out of your routine to take a break and come back with fresh ideas. These yes moments are where breakthroughs happen. They rejuvenate you, they challenge you, they expand your perspective, and sometimes they lead to opportunities you didn't even know you were looking for. Now I get it. This can feel like a balancing act. It is in some ways. As gym owners and leaders, we need to protect our time. There are days when saying no is non negotiable. But here's the thing, growth requires space, it requires openness. So instead of shutting every door to protect your time, leave room for the right yes. These moments don't just move your business forward, they energize you, help you avoid burnout, and remind you why you started in the first place. To wrap this up, I want you to think of your time not as a to do list to check off, but as a collection of experiences, roles, and opportunities that make up your journey. Yes, boundaries are critical. Say no when you need to protect your focus, but also honor the power of saying yes when it aligns with your vision, brings growth, and adds joy to your work and life. Balance your buckets, prioritize what matters, and stay open to the possibilities that a well placed yes can bring, because often it's those moments that lead to something extraordinary. Thanks for joining me today. If you found value in this episode, share with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, keep creating space for growth, connection, and success in everything you do. Until next time, keep thriving.
All right, guys, now it's time to hit the gym with a strength coach segment. Today I got on Brandon Cullen, and he brings an edgy approach to entrepreneurship through a valuable experience he's earned as a professional athlete turned business owner. He hosts an entrepreneurial-inspired podcast, Playing Guilty & Co., and he's the co-founder and chief concept officer at MADabolic, M-A-D, MADabolic, the industry's leading strength and conditioning franchise, and we're going to talk all about it. Brandon, thanks for doing this, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've been listening for a few years, so this is a fun opportunity for myself for sure.
All right, very cool. I think we should be glad you weren't listening back in the day when you were playing, because maybe you would have taken some of the Boyle concepts and you would have had a different direction. But Brandon was playing professional hockey, and through had an injury and really got into strength and conditioning. And when you were doing it, Brandon, really, it sounds like to me, because my buddy was the assistant coach for Bridgeport Sound Tigers, Greg Cronin.
Wow.
He's with Anaheim now as the head coach, but I used to go up to the games and they didn't have a strength coach even. And I was shocked at the time. I was like, are you kidding me? And so really talk about your journey of being an athlete and how you got into fitness. And also because a lot of times we're like, oh, all right, another athlete who's going to kind of, do his thing the way he came up. But you really kind of took an educated approach to us. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I'll start with super interesting. So Bridgeport was the last season I ever was on a team. I was in camp with the Islanders and unfortunately had a career-ending concussion that I didn't know at the time. So I went to Bridgeport to kind of try to work my way back and never made it. But I spent a whole season in Bridgeport there. It's a small world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was lucky when I was 16 years old and knew I had the opportunity to test myself in Canada at the major junior level. I was drafted by the Oshawa Generals, and my dad got me a personal trainer. So getting ready, right? Because like we talked about, a 16-year-old boy is very different than a 21-year-old man who's going to be your teammates and your opponents the next year. So it was getting your body ready to compete at that level. And I was super lucky that my first strength coach was a kid that just got out of college and he had a football background. So when all of my teammates and the people that I competed with at that point, it was not too intelligent training, right? It was a lot of bodybuilding and spinning, and I got put on Bigger, Faster, Stronger, which was a kind of famous football program in the late '90s, and that introduced me to Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, foot speed, and sprinting kind of drills. And I would just show up in camp in a different shape than my teammates. And I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was a kid. I worked hard, I showed up, and it translated onto the ice. So which I'm okay with, being an average player, fitness was that one thing I could control off the ice, and I kind of became obsessed with it through that major junior career, right into my professional career. And there came a point, right, where I had to decide, did I want to keep paying for a personal trainer, or did I want to start educating myself on what I had been taught, and then kind of furthering my own education. And after my first season professional, kind of went back home for the summer, and I lived just outside of Toronto, which is like a hotbed for young hockey players. And I just started getting some casual questions like, "Hey, Brandon, would you mind if I follow, your workout program?" And these were friends from teams I played on, or now opponents from other teams in professional or major junior, acquaintances through collegiate sports and that. And so I kind of like worked my way backwards, got certified so I could start charging. And all I was doing is training them on my program that I just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. So fast forward back to that concussion, it kind of just all ended one day. And a neurologist told me, you're never going to be medically cleared to play hockey again. And I had no collegiate background. I went straight from major junior to professional. So I kind of had to think quick. And the one thing I knew was fitness. And I can't say it was an easy transition by any means, but I worked a lot of odd jobs as I tried to figure out, could fitness be a career? And I was exposed to the birth of CrossFit. I got to see where I saw some holes and thought it could be problematic at scale. And the other major thing that kind of, catapulted my career was meeting my co-founder in that final year of hockey. And he was kind of in a similar boat, two kids trying to figure out what to do after their sport. And we dove in, and within a few years, we created a concept that eventually became the model we franchise today, which is MADabolic. And it's, we hang out in the boutique space. I just think we give the industry a different look. I mean, we're very well known for a strength bias approach. And then we're also known for the coaching and the safety and the scalability on our floors. So I get why other models work, more of a performance based class. And I'm not trying to be rude with that. I get why that works. I think what I'm trying to explain or sell is that for people that are looking for a little bit more and they value, structure and accountability, I think we're a very good option for people.
Yeah. So two things here. So first of all, I know one of those jobs as a bartender, so you're in the right place here. I mean, 18 years in the bar business. Mike was bartending at Fenway while he was being a strength coach. So we always find like some of the best strength coaches were bartenders. And so you guys opened your own boxes, right? CrossFit boxes, and just talk a little bit about, because I think there was that time when everybody just thought Because it was early on. Okay, at the time they were kind of marketing it as a, hey, this is for everything, right? And so military was getting in it. Some sports started to some teams started to get into it. So as athletes and having some educated training background, what did you kind of, and moving into metabolic, what were you seeing? Like you said, were the holes there?
Yeah, so I still believe if you're a 20 to 30-year-old capable athlete, feel free to test yourself in the sport of fitness. And what was CrossFit 10 years ago might be High Rocks today. You know what I mean? So I still think if
Yeah.
you have a background and you've trained for a while, that base gives you the opportunity to test yourself in those. And it's a short window, right? I think maybe 25 to 35, maybe 40 if you stay injury free, right? And I think you should do that. I think where we saw the holes, to your point, was we got to see when it shifted from, and we owned CrossFit boxes. I should say a box, and we're involved with another one from a primary ownership side of things. But we got to see when it kind of hit pop culture and it went from military, collegiate athletes, capable athletic people, and then it hit the general public. We also got to see when specialty versions of the model started happening within boxes. So Oli, CrossFit, strength. I'm trying to think, sort of powerlifting, CrossFit endurance, gymnastics focused. And what I found is it started to really split that community. Where at one point the bulk of the community followed that one workout a day, and it built this awesome ecosystem of conversation. And then all of a sudden you had CrossFit gyms on the same block who thought they were better than one another based on their program design. So what I didn't like was the opportunity from a scalability side of things and the fact that I deeply believe the methodology was built for a specific subset of people. And I think when the light bulb went off, I'll never forget this, right? So we were trying to grow our membership base and we had that core group, but we were still missing the everyday um, endurance junkie, the yogi, the weekend warrior, the busy parent, right? So we started hosting what we called at the time conditioning based classes on the weekend. And what we did was we removed the clock and kind of partnered up people and did more grunt work. So more of like set a timer and accomplish so much work together, but never pushing past the point of chasing a win. Just good old fashioned strength and conditioning for time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and all of a sudden we notice, well, why are our weekend classes busier than our Monday through Friday? And why are we tapping into people that we didn't see before? And one of the first things when we branched off and created what became MADabolic was let's remove the barbell. The movement patterns are fine. Let's remove the clock and actually have a specific start and stop point to the movement, meaning we could put an Olympic athlete and a young trainee on the floor and tell them, hey, we're going to focus on this movement. We're going to work for 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off. Here's what we expect out of the movement. Here's what to be careful of, and get the most out of your 60 seconds and rest when necessary. And that kind of changed the idea of using, like we all know interval training is a good way to build an athletic profile, right? Driving in different gears is a healthy thing for anybody. What we didn't know was how good of a business model it was going to be, having a start and stop point, having everyone on one level playing field, and it removes that notion of the best athlete always wins, and the person really trying to change their life is always finishing last. We could have a class that starts and stops at the same time, and everybody is working together in concert.
I love it. It really resonated with me when I heard about that's what you were doing, because when I went to group fitness in when I went to 5 Iron Fitness, when I went to doing groups on like classes, I was forced to do that. I didn't know that was going to be the byproduct of like why people loved it so much, but it was just easier for me to coach too, because everybody could, because I had an 83-year-old guy, Ken Arndt, still remember Ken being in there. I had guys in their 50s, 60s, and a couple in their 40s and 50s. And so I was like, man, I have this big spectrum here. And I have to figure out, how do I get them to understand, like to be okay with doing their own thing and not looking over to their right or looking how much weight Brad has on, in his hands versus what Ken's doing, or who's embarrassed, or with the timer. That time they were just sitting there focused on what they were doing. So I think it's a brilliant concept.
The other thing I think is important to think about is when you remove a rep scheme, you remove a scoreboard, people can actually focus on the quality of movement. So, maybe the 8 reps done well over 45 seconds is more I would say is more valuable
Yeah.
than the 12 sloppy reps that you were trying to get because someone said the number 12 you got to get to. So there was a lot of healthy byproducts from that. The other thing I want to just admit to, like, I have a huge respect for what CrossFit did for the industry. I'll be honest, and I don't know if you sit in the same place, but I think products like ours, um, we've all gotten smarter in the last 10 years. Like what we have gained in the last 10 years, even when I watch highlights of how hockey players train today or how football players train today versus 10, 15, 20 years ago, the whole industry from a education side of things has gotten much better. Unfortunately, our world, like boutique fitness, I think it's getting weaker, unfortunately, with just the natural scale and amount of options there are now. The level of coach or trainer or instructor, whatever you want to call them, I think has become diluted in the industry. So that's why we've always been known to kind of stick to our DNA. If anything, it's probably slowed our growth. We're at about 40 units open today, and if we just wanted to open as many as possible, we could probably be double that. But I think we want to grow correctly is the main thing. We want to grow the right way, and yeah, it's going good. Honestly, I think we're just getting started, but I'm really proud with my team and what we are trying to accomplish and kind of stick into those core values for sure.
Yeah, and let's expand on that a little bit with this idea about specialization. You wrote an article on LinkedIn that I was reading, The Power of Niche Concepts. And you were saying it's the most underrated form of innovation. And kind of going into this, it could be really tough to stick to, right? And you said a key red flag in a business life cycle is when companies overreach by adding products or services that dilute their specialty. And you've seen it unfold in the fitness industry. You gave some great examples, like when CrossFit, you just talked about it, when they went from an elite niche brand to a broad mainstream appeal. Flywheel, they were a cycling company. They were doing try to do 1 to 2 pound weights that made them more than a cycling brand.
Mhm.
And you're seeing it. You said this year we're seeing Orange Theory trying to pivot towards strength training, which is, I have the neighbors that go there. It's like, it's not strength training. You're not adding the weights. You're not doing any progressive overload. You're doing a lot of cardio. You're worried about what's up on that board. So you were saying, even with you guys, you were, which is a strength bias workout, you were toying with the idea of adding cardio inspired classes on the weekend. So just kind of expand on this idea of how important it is to specialize, and how, because you were just saying that could be, that could be the kiss of death by trying to be, and it's hard to stick to.
Yeah, and honestly, it's natural, right? Depending on how well and healthy your membership base and let's be honest, balance sheet is. So I am not. I get why people try to reinvent themselves. I think my argument is some of the examples you used is reinvent yourself within your niche, right? Orange Theory, they're still a gold standard in franchise operations. Whether I love their workout on the floor, let's be honest,
Yeah.
it works for a lot of people, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
the best workout is the one that kind of gets you out of bed 4 or 5 days a week. So I'm not here to like completely shit on them. Where I was a little worried for them about bringing in strength, it's not their thing. And then also too, the way I always look at it is that base that built you kind of run the risk of alienating that base. And if I was advising them, I would try to think, how can we be the best treadmill based company in the world? And what do our members want to see more of? And they may tell me it's strength, right? But I think it was more of the industry is trending this way, so we should jump on board
Yeah.
versus it was a well thought out, intelligent thing to do for their consumer base. I think one of my favorite examples, and people always ask, tell me some of your favorite brands in the fitness industry, and I always use this example. I say Pure Bar, and they're like, "What? Why? Why would you, a strength guy, like respect Pure Bar?" I'm like, "Well, number one, from an operational capacity side of things, the fact that they can do what they do in 2,000 square feet without bathrooms, I like the look of that and a few
Yeah.
mirrors. But aside from that, and I don't say these things to shock anybody or to get into an argument, but when have you ever heard Pure Bar make a statement that, we really got to do a better job of focusing on getting men in here? Never,
Yeah.
right? They have a workout that speaks to a very specific female demographic. They do it extremely well, and they kind of own that category or have for a long time. They don't need to figure out cardio. They don't need to figure out strength. They need to figure out how to continually reach that member when potentially a solid core comes next door and it's more up, it's a similar speed. Solid core is another brand, I think, that they really tap into that niche. I think when I come back to us, a lot of times I hear some pretty lazy arguments that, Brandon, you guys, you had a very, very strong tone and you need to consider being more inclusive. And my argument to that is everyone that we compete with in the boutique space, they're doing that. I mean, they are their product is inclusivity, and their product is everybody is welcome, and their product is light enough weights to not intimidate, and their product is a top 40 pop playlist. They're going after the average. And guess what? The people we target, there is less of those people on planet Earth. And I get that. But I'm much more comfortable with this kind of sniper approach of saying, this is where we do very well. This is what our clients love, and try to cater the entire offering to them versus that shotgun approach where you have 20 competitors running a similar playbook with a different set of Pantones. I think people think what I do is risky. I think that's risky. If you try to appeal to everyone, you kind of run the risk of identifying with nobody. And I just feel more comfortable advising and building niche businesses. And here's the funny thing, and we talked about this offline, Anthony. Um, Everyone's a little bit of a niche, right? I was speaking to someone pretty high up with Burn Boot Camp the other day, and they were kind of asking how we get away with our approach and our messaging. And what I said to her was, I said, on your website, your mission statement is to globally empower women and their families. If you do not believe that is a niche, I can't help you because, in my opinion, that statement attracts your clientele and pushes away my clientele, I think it's actually a pretty powerful niche that you guys own, and good on you. Like, so it's weird. I think when you hear the term niche or inclusive or exclusive, when someone says niche or says exclusive, they think it's a very hard position to take. It's not. It's just picking a consumer base and catering everything you do to make them smile on the regular and to give them the progress that they are looking for, to fill the gap that may be missing for them.
It answers a lot of questions for you as a business too. You know where you're going to market, right? Yeah, like for example, at 5 Iron Fitness, I'm going to go after golf pros. I know where those golf pros are. I know that at the time, most of them golfers were male, over 50. Right. So I knew what I had to do to go. So I think it also answers a lot of questions. And you were talking about in another article about this idea about, whether it's inclusive or exclusive, you can be both. They can coexist. And, you just gave a few examples, but I think if you're, if you're targeting overweight women in their 40s, right, who wish to reclaim their youth, that's how you said it.
Yep.
You're going to be soft and welcoming, right? You're probably going to deter Brandon and Anthony from going there, and that's okay because we really don't want Brandon and Anthony there. I think they're going to possibly ruin the culture, right? When you start to let those things seep in. Coach Boyle was talking about this for years, how, I always asked him, why don't you get kids from 7 to 10 in the gym? And after school, there's pockets of time when you could get those kids in and do it right. We're complaining that kids don't get enough exercise. Why don't you do it right? And he just felt like it would ruin some of the culture that they had in there. And he didn't want to bring now that young of an age in there. And in the same time, his business has evolved into more of an adult population, but that wasn't a specific position that he was looking to take. He let the market decide, and more adults were coming in. More people were coming who wanted to train like their kids, or they heard they had good reputation for maybe people with injuries. So I think, those two can coexist, like you said.
Yeah, well, let me give you a good example on a couple of those things. So once in a blue moon, we'll have a new client come in and say, "Oh, you guys don't have daycare." And we're like, "No, no, no, we don't. Our entire kind of service is geared towards the individual on the floor, and we want to make sure that we can put all the focus towards them." And then to go back to Burn Boot Camp, who always offers daycare, right? So again, I'm going to say this, and I don't want it to trigger people, right? But the type of parent that comes to our facility, it's their break from their kids. They don't want to see other children and have planned accordingly to not have to use daycare. Does that make our clientele an elitist? God, no. It's just a different want or need that we are trying to fill. On the flip, the busy parent, depending on their situation, may need daycare. And for them, Burn Boot Camp is the perfect opportunity. Neither of these are right or wrong, but for the individual, it's going to fit their needs better. And then as you do daycare, do it extremely well. As we don't do daycare, stick to your guns. Don't let kids hang out in the lobby. And again, I think when a lot of times that's why I like doing podcasts, right? Because if I put these words into a LinkedIn article, they can be received in a different way. I think if you hear the tone in my voice, I am very impressed with Burn Boot Camp's growth. If I try to act like Burn, I'm going to get burned. I'm better off catering to the MADabolic consumer, listening to what they like and want and need, and catering a product to them.
Yeah, and I think once you make that decision, like you were talking earlier about the type of real estate that you're going after, right? That under 3,000, right? Am I right? Is that the number, about under right around 3,000?
Yeah, we've been able to, in the past, big project in the past about 18 months, we've been able to shrink the footprint about 500 to 750 square feet. We have a very strong partnership with a equipment provider out of Reno, Beaverfit. And with their equipment fabrication, we've been able to kind of claw back 500 square feet. So I kind of just did this average. So I could actually say to this right now, but our last 10 openings have opened at 27 to 5, I believe, which is under that 3,000 mark, which is good for real estate, cost of real estate, and stuff like that.
Sure, sure. I do want to talk about as well this idea about scalability. I think you and I were talking earlier. I think we as business owners, or we're seeing a lot of this is how you scale. And I love what you said on this. To build something that scales big, you need to master the art of being great at average. So this is going to shock some people, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, while admirable, is difficult to replicate on a large scale. So that's a brilliant statement. The question entrepreneurs need to ask themselves is this: are you building a business for excellence or scalability? Neither choice is right or wrong, but you need to decide. Can you expand on this? Because again, if you don't say this on a podcast, people are like, are you out of your mind? Average? No, we're, especially in this day and age with, you gotta, get up at 4 a.m. and let me show you my watch and let's do 400 push-ups and, we're going to sell and we're going to do this and you're going to be a man, so that there's this idea about being comfortable with average. I love the way you put it.
Yeah. And I think it's so multi-layered, right? Because you have to decide what is important to you. For Kirk and I, my co-founder, we wanted to build a company that could scale big enough, but was deeply respected by fitness professionals. So that was kind of a thing for us where I'm super confident when a competitor or one-off strength and conditioning coach, high-level PTs come and do a class from us that they are like, man, are they good? But that has a ceiling, right? But the ceiling's not as small as you think. Like, let me give you an idea of our initial goal. We hope to target the top 50 markets in the United States and put 2 to 5 units depending on population density. And I think you could conservatively say that gets you to 150 to 200 units without being greedy at all. To me, pretty damn good scale right there, right? It's not Orange Theory scale, but it's good scale. So like number one, for us, a purpose-driven, proud of what I have accomplished and the respect of my peers is important to me and my co-founder. Now let me flip on the flip of that. Maybe money drives you and a massive exit drives you, and that allows you to give your family the best life they could ever have. Well, at that point, average scales. You want to look at something that can be placed beside a lens crafters in middle America and still make money, right? So maybe the individual driver is money. And by the way, that's fine. Like I know some people say money won't buy you happiness. I've seen a lot of rich people that are pretty fucking happy. So maybe that's their thing.
Yeah.
What Kirk and I really wanted to do was develop something that was respected in the industry. And I still think that gives us an exit one day. It might not be the most powerful fitness business from a balance sheet in the end, and it might not have the most units, and it might not be in every country. But I mean, I can sleep at night if we open 150 great units. And financially, my family and my kids and everyone close to me will benefit from 150. We don't have to get to 1,000. Now, here's what I don't know. If we do what we set out to do well, you could open up a bigger opportunity, because if you do this correctly, at some point you become a noun. You're a thing that people know. And at that point, you can put your sign up on a building. And if you've done this right, you might be able to take that 150 to 500. But the goal is, right now, we're at 40 today. We'll be at 50 by Q1 of 2025. The next goal is 100. The next goal is 150. I just don't know what it looks like above 150. But your initial statement, the way I relate that to is when you're in a startup phase and you start thinking about how big you want to get. And if you want to grow huge, I think perfecting average is a much better approach than chasing excellence.
I think when you were talking about this, part of the problem can be when you try to be so big is you lose that control, right? So when you're trying to do something special, and and that's part of your mission statement, you lose control the more that you get out there. So I guess if a good thing would be if somebody, like, I live in Indy, you guys are opening one hopefully soon. I know there's some construction stuff going on there. But so he's got one there, maybe downtown Indy, but then there's Carmel, Indiana. There's a couple of really good spots that would be far enough away to kind of keep those numbers up. Would that be the best from that perspective, is to kind of have the same group, sorry, I should say group, owning in that, those different markets, owning multiple, to kind of keep that quality high, most likely. Am I right on that? Or could that be still?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be dependent on the size of the market, right? So for instance, we were looking at Houston recently with our current franchise owner. And Houston, I just read the other day, it's about to take over Chicago from the third most populous city in the United States, right? Wow. So, like, you can make an argument there that, let's say, Chicago or Houston could tolerate 9 MADabolics. I think you could still set up 3 groups in the right radius where they would never cannibalize one another, and um, it would allow those franchisees to actually, like, build off of one another's momentum. We've never to date ever put people in competition with one another. We're very strategic about that. If you think about the Indianapolis example, we just sold a 2-unit deal there to the group there. And I'll be honest, the owner, Jason, he has a background in franchising in the health space, not fitness, but in the health and wellness space. And it would have to be a pretty compelling argument to do something outside of their partnership right now. And if we had a warm lead, we'd actually talk to Jason about that. So the goal there is, we actually were planning on starting in downtown Indy, but we just got this killer deal in Broad Ripple, which was going to be Unit 2. So that's where it starts. And if we do this well, we know Jason will want to hit those other secondary markets, like you said. If someone, let's say they open in Q1 and they start to make noise, and someone came to us for that Carmel neighborhood, I think that's what you said,
Yeah.
Carmel.
Yeah, Carmel.
We'd approach Jason. We'd say, hey man, so we actually got some strong interest in your area. Do you want to take this off the table to kind of protect that radius? And here's the thing, I'm not naive to say that could change, right? Like, we're at 40 units. As proud as I am of my team, we're not sitting at a place where Orange Series or F45s only sell 5 or 10 packs, right? We're in a different stage there. But I can tell you in my gut, I think it's better to do less franchisees than more. I don't love single unit deals, but I don't love 10 packs that could take 10 years to open. I like 2 to 4 unit deals that can get done in 5 years, and that's kind of how we approach it.
Very cool. Let's kind of turn it into, this is the Strength Coach podcast. So I want to talk about the programming because I was finding it very interesting listening, talking to Casey, who is a friend of mine who I know just really through fitness. And then when I saw your name come up for an interview, and then I was like, oh, wait, I heard Casey's going to be the manager there. So I sat down with him for a little bit, talked about the programming, talked about my concerns from a perspective like, hey, is this CrossFit light? Is it just a smarter version of CrossFit? Is it who is this for, et cetera? What's the program? Is it going to be a workout of the day? Which, look, I'll be honest, we try to be a little bit more educated here and a little bit more informed. And I don't love a workout of the day like they were doing it. It seemed a little ridiculous back in the day. Anyway, I don't know that there's a lot of great CrossFits now. I think it's evolved in like the separate boxes, the brilliant people owning them and doing things, ramping people up. Let's talk about your programming and how people enter. Because I know back in the day, they would just like somebody would come in and they would start cleaning and snatching and they could be 40 or 45. So talk to us about what your program and how it's different, how people are going to be safer and you're taking that more educated approach.
Yeah, so we started off, I mean, removing the scoreboard is huge. Having a start and stop point. The other thing too is um, we so if this is the hard thing, I'm trying to not over exercise science the group, but I think you might be the audience. I can go on a little
Yeah,
bit of a
you
tangent,
can.
right? So this is not something I throw on a billboard that gets people sprinting in the doors, right? It's very different. Training the perfect athlete and running a successful business is kind of at odds with one another. But let me give it a go. Okay, so and let's remove CrossFit because
Yeah.
we actually, yeah, they have a very loud bark, but a very kind of small bite in the fitness ecosystem. And I'm not being rude with that. I'm just saying if you take any other discipline, whether it's cycling, running, boot camp, hit concepts, like it's just they have a small bite, right? So we compete in pop culture boutique fitness. One of the things we're trying to do this year actually is kind of say we're not in boutique fitness. We're a strength and conditioning club, and this is who we target. So we do extremely well with about 25 to 50, I would say. Um, you'll notice they are more of a type A, highly structured person that likes accountability and likes predictability. So we definitely are strength bias, right? So that would have to speak to them. And I would say the range is about 25 to 40 for females and about 30 to 50 males. Being a guy, I think it takes us a few extra years to grow up and listen to people. And I think that's that 5-year swig. Um, but as far as the program design goes and relating it to who we are forced to compete with, we actually have 3 different styles or themes of intervals. So it's the MAD acronym, and the momentum themed intervals are a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. They focus on athleticism and endurance, and those workouts, we teach the clients how to gradually increase their pace and intensity from about 70 to 80 to 90%, but we stop them there. This is a controlled sprint near the end. So it's a very energetic feeling. You'll see movement like single arm power based movements, jumping and landing, foot speed, percentage based increases on the Concept 2 machines. So a very athletic, structured build and intensity. Number 2 is our anaerobic intervals, right? Remember how I said we stopped you at 90%? Well, these are your 100% efforts. And in order to be able to have you attempt that pace, it's a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, which in our world is pretty unheard of. Like everyone's just nonstop motion. Like you might be working for 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 6 times at a specific movement with a minute to transition between movements. So we actually give you the work to rest. We give you the work, or we give you the rest so you're able to work. Those days will load you in both hands. Think of these as very straight up and down and straightforward movements. So big deads, squats, kettlebell swings, presses, thrusters, and then we will chase those with either all out cardiovascular kind of efforts or max effort jumping. But even like everything we do, when I say a max effort jump, it's like a reach, load, explode, land soft, stand tall, reset, start over, right? It's just a perceived exertion more so than just this idea of 100%. And then finally, our durability intervals, which kind of really made, our name in the industry. They're a 3-to-1 work to rest ratio, anywhere from a 2 to 5 minute grind at a single movement. It's an 80% pace that minute 2 should look like minute 5. So the way you load yourself, the way you move, your pace should allow you to last. And think of like single arm, unilateral stuff, get up variations, heavy carries, slide boards, bear crawls, stuff like that. So if you look at these 3 themes, momentum, anaerobic, durability, we also have 6 intervals per theme. So our annual calendar right now is cycling through 18 intervals. Um, and the calendar is broken up into 12-week cycles. Even within a 12-week cycle, there's a 2-week microcycle, and every 13th week is an unloaded deload week. So, Anthony,
Right.
you and I know this is very different than the sandbox we compete in. It may be tough to articulate this to an uneducated consumer. And when I say uneducated, I don't mean a dumb consumer. I mean they didn't go to
Yeah.
school for kinesiology, right? But this is why our retention rates are through the roof. This is why we don't have injuries. This is why we don't have plateaus. So at the end of, a client's first 12 weeks, they're looking at themselves in the mirror. Things are looking better. Clothes are fitting good. They're feeling confident. They're feeling strong. They're walking taller. They don't need to know all the inner workings of the program design. They know they can show up, they can safely move weight, and they're going to have coaches that make them better every day. And again, easier to translate and easier to translate to you and maybe to the listener base. So we got to get a little bit creative with advertising and marketing, get people in the door and let the workout do what it does. Um, I realize that was long-winded, but is that where you wanted me to go with that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you said was, which makes me feel better is minute 2 should look like minute 5, right? I think there in a lot of these, you know, group fitness, at least boutique fitness type places, they'll just run people into the ground and they'll start out strong. And it's like, my whole thing is like, look, power is not conditioning. You shouldn't be doing jumps for 5 minutes, right? This is that you're doing it wrong, right? According to the science, right? And also that's how people get hurt. So I think, when we listen to these things, like what you said, I think minute 2 should look like minute 5. And I think you're saying it, that means you're conveying that or educating your coaches on that. And that's how it's going to trickle down to the consumer. And I think I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, you look great for your age. I'm
Oh,
43 today, and I'm hoping I'm looking like you when I get into my upper 50s. But I think you also learn this. I was the classic overtrainer as a young kid. I even think a lot of my injuries in hockey came from just being too tightly wound to oversimplify it. But you learn as you get older that every day can't and shouldn't be game day. And if you want to stay on the ice, on the field, on the court longer, you have to train a little bit more intelligently. Now, going back to my statement earlier in the podcast, I do believe the industry is finally listening and wising up, and there's enough strong voices where recovery, longevity, and everything in between is just as much a talking point as fitness is these days. So I think, where we are about to enter is going to be, it has the opportunity to be a good time in our industry, and where a lot of concepts, like we talked about Orange Theory earlier, and again, I have a certain level of respect for their operations, but I think a lot of people are going to try to figure out, how do you do this intelligent strength training over the next 5 years? And what I'm here to tell you, it's all we've been doing for the last 12, and we're retweaking and refining. And the most interesting thing is, as people expand what they should do, I actually find we're contracting what we should do. We're doing what works often. It doesn't have to be flashy. It just has to work, because you can bring creativity and personality through your coaches' attitudes, through the music selection, through whatever's in your lobby. But boring training has always worked, and I think there is and that's not to say we're boring, but doing things that worked often and taking the appropriate rest is an intelligent way to continually progress.
I think it's a great lesson for everybody listening to, because a great example of that right now, and you were saying how there's a lot of these companies that are going to say, hey, we need to get, Peter Attia is talking about it, right? Callie Means came out with, good energy, and people are like, hey, how do we make sure we're building muscle? Because the research is there, the VO2 max, blah, blah, blah. And everybody, there's all these different trends. There's, the cold plunges and infrared and saunas, and people are trying to add things, and you guys are sticking to what your core values are. And I think it's super important to do that.
Yeah, and there is the one thing I am a little bit, we've been talking a little bit about, even on our social channels, is there's a lot of information for the poor consumer today. Like, do I need to be doing my sauna on top of that cold tub? And, is MADabolic giving me enough cardio, or do I need to jump into this, or whatever the internal dialogue would be? And, the sad thing is stress, right? So depending on how well you're sleeping, your living situation with maybe a young family, and if you're training 4 days a week, mixing in a run on the weekends, trying to get to a cold tub and a sauna, that's still stress on the body, right? And I think that's why we have found a lot of success, that we get our clients to train with us 4 days a week, and we say use those other 4 days for active recovery. So maybe it's rucking, maybe it's a yoga class, maybe it's golfing, maybe it's walking. Whatever it is, it's almost like movement without an agenda. But you shouldn't be beating yourself down outside of your training hours. And I think that's where the industry is getting a lot smarter.
Yeah, we'll just kind of finish up on one thing, going back to me, of course, because it's really my show. But one thing that's really been amazing for me is getting back to hockey again since September. It's twice a week. It's only stick time, but being a trainer, I'm taking an educated approach. I have the heart rate monitor on a lot of the times. I'm doing some sprinting. I'm out there. You always tell when the kids or the old guys are out there. When there's only like one or two old guys out there like us, you don't hear any pucks in the beginning. Right. Everybody's learning, skating, got to get that skating going. I'm doing a lot of stuff but I'm getting in such better shape from those 2 days a week. And I can tell you, especially if I see kids out on the ice or they're out there with me, I absolutely love it. I am out there smiling the whole time. So to your point about, rucking and doing things that you enjoy, whatever, walking the dog, going in the woods, I think it's important to make sure we're adding that stuff. It's a great point about stress.
Yeah, it's wild. Part of unfortunately my career ending concussion is I have to be very, very careful with exertion. To oversimplify it, is it's almost like filling up a gas tank. And if you let that overfill, it kind of spills into just too many areas of your life. It's taken me 15 years to find kind of like my stress level that doesn't put me into a bad place.
Yeah.
So for me, I do a lot of our durability intervals on my own because, if I stick myself in a class, that competitive spirit's going to it's going to
Yeah.
come back. So I very much stick to our durability driven movements and um, even provide a little bit more rest, I would say, in between so I can bring my heart rate down to kind of a resting. So I lift 3 to 4 days a week, depending on what my kid's schedule is, and then ruck 1 to 2 days a week. And it kind of blows me away what you can maintain when I used to near kill myself in the gym. Now, am I like I was at 25? Absolutely not, and shouldn't be. But I still am strong enough, capable enough, and feel good. And I think the biggest thing I would love to anyone listening to this that might be on the fence of, Brandon sounds interesting. Maybe I'll look at MADabolic. Well, whether it's me or anyone else, the idea of learning to drive in different gears is a very healthy thing. Um, you don't need to cripple yourself every workout. And I would tell the listeners to take an honest look at your program, and usually you're your best judge. If you are exhausted all the time from your workout, you're probably pushing too hard. There might be a different way to look at it.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome conversation. Loved it. I love what you're doing. I love what Metabolic's about. Like I said, I had my meeting with Casey and kind of researching on you. And then I'll tell everybody, we'll have links to Brandon's LinkedIn as well, and Metabolic social media, because he's got some great articles on there. Talks a lot about entrepreneurship. He's starting his podcast up again. It's called Plain Guilty. It's PLYNGLTY. That's on Spotify as well, and we'll have links to all that stuff. So Brandon, thanks so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the Broad Ripple location opening up, because I'm going to go down there and get some workouts in and really kind of test the concept too, and I think it'll be fun.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate your platform and reach, and having me on here. Like I said, I've been a fan for some time now, and always respected with who the team that you're associated with and the stuff that you guys have done and kind of been pushing an agenda for some time now. So keep up the good work, because a lot of people are following you.
Very cool. All right, that's going to do it for episode 393 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Guys, the show notes are located at strengthcoachpodcast.com. Don't forget, you can try both strengthcoach.com and nbsc.tv out for 7 days for free. Sign up at each respective website, strengthcoach.com and nbsc.tv. Special thanks to Chris Parter and the folks over at Perform Better. Perform Better's huge holiday sale is here, up to 50% off. Over 100 items. Don't forget, they have a rewards program. Pretty easy. You just sign up. You'll get points just for signing up. You'll earn points every time you shop, and then you can redeem those points for exclusive rewards. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Brandon Cullen for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning and performance enhancement. Thanks to Sumit Seth and Namli, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Check out the show notes for Namli's free fitness business bundle. 3 gifts to you: a checklist, 51 ways to acquire clients without running ads, a cheat sheet, 12 places to look to hire star trainers, and a guide, 9 secrets to increase your retention. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Anthony Rana. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.